Today is June 30th, 2022. My name is Adolfho Romero. I'm here on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at the University of Florida. And today I have the pleasure to meet Mr.
Ellis Jones.
All right, Mr. Ellis Jones, pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having us here today at the Chappie Museum in Pensacola region. Mr. Ellis, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? When and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Pensacola in the year 1944. In fact, I was born probably within a mile of this house museum that we're at. And so I spent a good part of my life in Pensacola. And after college, I moved to Southern California, and I spent probably 40 years there. After my wife and I divorced, I decided to move back to Pensacola, so I've been living in Pensacola for the last 10 or 11 years.
Okay, perfect. Can you tell me a little bit about your parents, your mother, your father? Were they also born in Pensacola region, or?
No, my mother was born in Alabama in a small county called Wilcox County, and within that county, there's a small town that's named Camden, C-A-M-D-E-N. And she spent a good part of her life there. She was part of a family of 12. There were 6 males and 6 females. And she was born in a time when families did a lot of farming. And so around the year 1930, mid-30s, after her father passed, and even a little before then, the males in the family decided that they wanted to strike out and leave the farming community because there were jobs being made available in a lot of the northern cities because of the manufacturing capabilities that were being upgraded. So all of the males moved to Detroit, and later the females stayed in the South, and most of them moved to Pensacola.
Okay.
And so they stayed here, raised families. The males went to Detroit for the most part and raised families there.
All right. Do you remember any of those stories that your mother would tell you, back in those days? I mean, sharecropping times. How was it for her? Was it difficult? I mean, with a lot of children and everything, raising them, but yet working the lands. How was that experience on that end?
I during the latter stages of my mother's life, I got involved in doing family research. And I did ask her about the family and her life when she was a child, but she did not. She was not forthcoming about the lifestyle, and I can understand that things were pretty tough back in those days. So she did paint a picture of her going to school. I guess most of the family attended a school that was privately funded school, and it was funded by the Presbyterian Church, Presbyterian Mission, I should say, because in those days there was very little monies were allocated towards education for blacks. So the Presbyterian Mission and also the Lutheran Mission developed a series of, I think there were 6 schools that they paid for, financed, and built within that county of Wilcox. So the school that she attended was called Camden Academy, which lasted until the late 60s, I believe. And so it was so this Presbyterian Mission, I'm using the word mission, but it was a Presbyterian church, funded the teachers and the buildings, and it was a great effort for the kids, because in the farming communities early on, kids were, I'm not sure if the law stated it, but I think the average, I'm hearing, this is hearsay, that grade schools went up through the 5th or 6th grade, and that was about it. And after that, you started working in the field. So that wasn't, people saw that was not a good way to further your education with just a 5th grade education. So luckily, the Presbyterian Church and the Lutheran Church came along and started financing those schools.
Wow, that is something that I didn't think about the church and the impact that it had in the community for educational purposes.
Right.
Throughout the years, did your mother follow the Presbyterian church, or was she involved in that, or
No,
or
strangely
Lutheran?
enough, I was raised as a Catholic.
Okay.
And later, she left the Catholic Church and joined the Episcopal Church.
Okay.
So both her and my father spent the remainder of their lives as Episcopalians.
Okay, and can you tell me a little bit about your father?
So my father was also born in Alabama. He was born in a small town that was in Montgomery County, so it was located close to the city of Montgomery. So he was born there, and his mother and father, don't really know much about his father, but I know his mother, I remember her, so they moved to Pensacola, and he worked for the local railroad during most of his life, all of his life that I remember, the L&N Railroad, Louisville and Nashville Railroad.
Yeah.
So those were the days when they actually had passenger trains that made a stop in Pensacola, and then they went both had a northern route and they had a western route. So now if someone wants to catch a passenger train, we would have to go to New Orleans to catch the passenger train, and then if we wanted to go west, it would take us, let's say, to California, Oregon. So we no longer have passenger trains that come through Pensacola. We do have the freight trains, but no passenger trains.
Okay, do you still remember any of those trips, like traveling back and forth? Was that just your father doing it during his early days?
I remember one trip specifically. We were, my brother and myself and my mother, we were traveling to Detroit, and the thing that I remember so vividly is, I can't remember what age I was, but I do remember that my mother had to leave us because she had to go to the bathroom, and she said, okay, stay here. And my being a little bit impetuous, I decided to follow her, and I remember getting my finger caught in in the bathroom door or something.
Oh, wow.
So I remember screaming in pain. So I remember that trip, and then we had a few trips because since my father worked for the railroad, we got some discounted trips. So
was this during segregation or desegregation time?
this was segregation time. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure. I can't remember. That's what I can't remember. But that's what I guess I don't recall the segregation.
Do you
remember?
Okay.
I mean, you mean? Are you speaking of the train?
Yeah, the train itself. Like,
the train itself, yeah, I don't remember.
The experience itself.
Yeah, I don't remember about the train itself.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember about the train itself.
All right, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting job. A lot of the folks that we've talked about, the parents, they worked on the trains as well. So
Right.
at least you guys were able to travel back and forth. A lot of people just got stuck in one position. You don't really leave that area, but at least, hey, you were able to navigate around.
Right,
so
right,
that's,
right.
Especially, I mean, going all the way to Detroit nowadays and going back over there, that's quite a trip.
Yeah, I like to do that again sometimes,
Oh, wow. Do you still do it nowadays?
No, the last train ride that I had was probably about 20 years ago when my wife and I traveled by train to California. But I haven't traveled since that time. But, I met the good thing about that, you meet some interesting people on the train. So, yeah. It's a slow, when you don't have a specific time frame or meetings, or if you don't have a specific schedule, trains are great because I remember the fact that we were probably, by the time we arrived in Southern California, we were probably like 12 hours off schedule.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So it's a great way to travel when you kind of don't have a time commitment, you're not in a hurry. It's great.
Okay, so it seems like you were exposed to a lot of areas, at an early age, just traveling around, having like that knowledge in the back of your mind. Can you tell me a little bit about like your experiences as a kid? Like what school did you attend and how was that? What memories do you have of that, your education?
Well, I attended the local Catholic school, St. Anthony's Catholic School, which is located about 3 blocks from here. And so I attended it. The school was small. We had 4 classrooms, and the school went from grades 1 through 8. So our teachers were all nuns, and each nun had 2 grades. So 1st and 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then 7th and 8th. So I had 4 teachers, And it amazes me how they could, when I think about how they could manage 2 grade levels in one class period, but they did it adequately. So I'm really happy for that education experience that I had at St. Anthony's.
Okay. Do you have any fond memories of a specific memory of the teacher or something? How would you get to school? Let me ask you.
I walked. You know, I was only a few blocks away, so it was not a big deal to walk.
Okay.
And one of the big experiences that I can still remember was, I think, happened in the maybe 5th or 6th grade when we were students. The teacher brought us out. We had recess. We'd have a morning recess, then lunch period, and then maybe an afternoon recess again before school ended. So this one morning, our teachers took us all. We were out at recess, and one of the nuns said, "Okay, today we're going to have a big surprise. Keep your eyes peeled to the sky, because sooner or later you're going to see something that's going to amaze you." So yeah, we were growing impatient. We were playing and we were running about, and soon the nun said, "Okay, look, look, look." And we looked and we saw this big object coming towards us, right? And we noticed that it seemed to be coming like a dive right at us. We couldn't figure, first maybe it was a bird, but as we got larger and closer and closer, we noticed it was an airplane. Oh. And so this airplane came towards us as a dive bomber, went up, wow, did some acrobatic maneuvers, you know, I'm talking about what, maybe the 50s? And so we were all really amazed at what this pilot did. And so this happened for maybe 15 minutes, I'm guessing. Wow. And so we went back into the classrooms, and the teacher said, "Everybody, you just saw a pilot named Chappie James."
Wow.
He was, and she said, "Yeah, he was born a few blocks away from the school, and he's a pilot in the Air Force. And sometimes when he comes home, he surprises everybody and lets people know that he is here." So that was my first experience hearing the name Chappie James.
That's a grand entrance.
So that was, yeah. And then, you know, I talked to other people. I think I was talking to someone a few days ago who lived in Alabama. I can't remember. I think maybe I can't remember what part of Alabama, small town. But she said, "Yeah, I remember he'd come in and he would fly low over the houses, and he would do his thing. Let us know Chappie is here."
Chappie is here.
So it was kind of an adventuresome time for us kids to be aware that there was someone from your neighborhood who's flying, who's got those kinds of skills. So I really look back and reflect and think about those memories often.
Yeah. How old were you when this?
Like I said, I was probably in the 5th grade.
Okay.
I'm thinking, definitely I was in elementary school, so maybe 5th or 6th grade. So this would have happened, I'm sure, in the 50s.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever interact afterwards with Chappie later on in life, or?
I don't
you were too
think
young?
I did. I don't think I ever met him personally.
Okay.
I don't think I ever met him personally. He did, you know, there were times when he would come to Pensacola, and of course he was always surrounded by a bevy of politicians and newspapermen and people that he knew, so I never really got a chance to talk to him. I did, you know, stand up close and admire him and hear him talk. And I also attended Tuskegee, so he would oftentimes, not often, but occasionally he would be a guest on the campus. But again, I never really had a chance to interact with him.
Okay, so moving on a little bit towards your formative years, you said that you attended Tuskegee. Can you tell me a little bit about your experiences there, or what made you go over there, or how did you end up going?
Well, as a high school student, there were a few colleges that we could apply to. You know, as an African American, things were unlike today's times, where you could apply for a bevy of colleges and universities throughout the nation. But I graduated from high school in the 60s. And so typically we applied to the historically black colleges, unless you wanted to venture out and go to a school that was out of the region, let's say the northern school. But for the most part, my classmates stayed in the South. And then because of the segregated system of education, we knew that we probably would not be admitted unless you wanted to be a person like Medgar Evans or Edgar's, what's his name? The guy who integrated the University of Mississippi, or the lady who integrated the University of Alabama. So for the most part, I went to apply for Tuskegee, interest at Tuskegee.
During those times, it was almost civil rights time, movement time, 1960s, mid of the 60s. What did you notice about the political climate during that time?
Yeah.
How was it? Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot was going on.
It was crazy. I never will forget my freshman English instructor, Dr. Ada Peters, and this was obviously probably during the election period, and she came into the class, and she was a PhD from I think Boston University or Boston College, and she said, I tried to go in, she spoke to the class, she said, I tried to go downtown to register today, and they wouldn't let me register. I flunked the literacy test. So she said, yeah, I flunked the literacy test, and this is a lesson, so I think what they did, I can't remember, they had one of the tests was someone would give you a Bible and give you a passage and say, interpret this.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly what a test, but I think that was it. But anyway, she flunked the test, so she could not register to vote. And at that time, Tuskegee was also the city was going through a legal battle. There was a huge court decision in which Tuskegee was primarily black. I think maybe 75% of the people within the community were black. But what the state legislature decided to do was to, if I remember reading the information, so you have maybe like a rectangular shaped voting district. What they decided to do was to make that rectangular shaped district and move I think they ended up with like 28 different sides to it, and basically when they finished with it, only, let's say 10% of the blacks were eligible to vote.
Wow.
And so that ended up causing a decision. I think they went to the state Supreme Court, maybe the federal Supreme Court. It was entitled Gomillion versus Lightfoot. So, because one of the instructors at Tuskegee named Dr. Gomillion initiated a lawsuit to get this gerrymandering issue settled. So it finally was settled after, a few years in court. So it was an interesting time. And so, the politics were, it wasn't uncommon for me, because Tuskegee was a private school, to see a lot of the civil rights workers come on the campus. It was nothing to see people like Senator Julian Bond or Stokely Carmichael or H. Ralph Bound come on to the campus and talk to us about their efforts. And, when you talk about civil rights, I have to think about the efforts of one of the instructors, our dean of students, Dr. Phillips. Somehow got a grant, and it was called it ended up developing a program called the Tuskegee Institute Community Education Program. So what it involved was it provided the students at the campus a chance to both gain some political experience, although we weren't meant to politicize our efforts, but it was meant to tutor the kids in the surrounding counties. So the summer of '65, I got assigned to a county called Lowndes County, okay. LOWNDES, and while I was there, we stayed there for 3 months, myself and 3 other guys. And so we got a chance to see the initial efforts of what was then called the Lowndes County Freedom Party, which ended up becoming the Black Panther Party. They were really
Wow.
the first Black Panther Party. Then the guys in Oakland decided, yeah, can we use that Black Panther as our logo? So anyway, so we got a chance to see the development of people who hadn't previously voted at all, even though they were the majority of the county residents. They didn't have the right to vote, even though theoretically,
Yeah.
in theory they could vote, but they couldn't. So there were all kinds of Jim Crow laws throughout the South during that period of time. So it was pretty tough on the residents, and I got a chance to see the people transform themselves in their community to say, hey, we can't take this anymore. We're going to start voting, and they had to risk their lives and their jobs and their families to do a simple community effort to vote. So
Okay.
quite a revelation.
Yeah, definitely quite the revolution. There's a lot to unpack in all the information you just provided. I guess what I wanted to know a little bit more, did you face any of those like racial attacks, racism attacks, prejudice attacks in the community while you were before or while you were in the Tuskegee?
Well, growing up in
growing up.
Pensacola,
Exactly.
there were minor incidents, but I was never physically attacked per se. I mean, no one ever grabbed me or hit me, but there was a lot of intimidation. For example, there were certain areas, for example, riding my bike, I could not ride my bike in a few areas because I'd be kind of taunted and run and say, no, you can't come over here. So yeah, so then name calling, those kinds of things,
Yes,
but
sir.
no real physical attacks.
Okay, and I want to know a little bit about Tuskegee. Like itself, like was there like a brotherhood in there, or how did it feel being in that campus? Like, what was your experience like being in there? Do you feel like welcoming? It was a welcome place, and or what was? Yeah.
Welcoming? Yeah, well, yeah. As a freshman at Tuskegee, there was I'm not sure if that goes on now, but as a freshman, you were kind of hazed, so the upperclassmen always come in and they would run after you and they cut a T in your hair, right? So when you think about it, I hadn't thought about that. So that was our welcome.
Yeah.
That was our welcoming to the campus. But it was a very small campus, so we had probably a student body that didn't exceed 5,000 students. So it was a fairly close-knit student body because people got a chance to recognize, even though you didn't know people by name, it was a fairly close-knit student body population.
Okay, did you join any fraternities or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Were they available during the time?
Right.
Okay, and what were you studying during that time?
I studied electronics.
Electronics.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were mentioning you were part of the political revolution movement going on during that time.
I wasn't really part of it, and so I was kind of like
around
a
you.
bystander. But so when we went to Lowndes County, we were there to supplement the teachers because their educational system was so poor. So we spent a summer there supplementing the teachers' efforts because they had summer school in the local churches. So we were there mainly to supplement the teachers and not necessarily to politicize.
Okay.
We were told, don't get involved in the politics. We did on a cursory basis, but not really doing a whole lot. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And once you graduated, what did you end up doing?
Once I graduated, a few of my friends and I, classmates, we decided to take jobs in California. So there were maybe out of the class, probably 5 of us decided to take jobs in California. So we wanted to see the bright lights. So we moved to Northern California, and we worked. My first job was with Lockheed Missiles, so in Sunnyvale, and so stayed there for maybe 2 years, and then I moved to Southern California. After that.
Okay. Comparing California to Pensacola region, did you feel like it was a different climate, either political or was it similar climate? Being there. Well, what would you say what's the difference between Pensacola?
Well, we had a rude awakening. I remember when we first moved to Northern California. Our first job was to find an apartment, right? And so we thought it would be we ran across the racism in those cities when you were, depending on where you would look for an apartment, you see an ad in the paper, you call, is the apartment available? You show up, it's just it's been rented. So we ran across that. So it was kind of a rude awakening in a sense, but overall the experiences went fairly good.
And what did you do during that time frame, those 2 years? What were you doing?
You mean
in California, Northern and Southern California?
Like I said, you working, and then I got married a few years later after I moved to Southern California. So I was still single at the time.
Okay, so you met your wife in Southern California?
Yes.
And how was that experience? How did you guys meet?
It was good for a long time. Let's say, like I said, we were married, 40 years, I guess.
Wow,
I think that sounds about right. Then things kind of grew apart, so we divorced, and I moved back here.
Okay, children? Do you have two children? What do they currently do? Or
my daughter she's facing so she's not working now. She's had some heart issues.
Okay.
And then my son is he worked in animal science, veterinarian, yeah.
Wow, that is quite the profession too.
Yeah.
Good, congratulations. Right. And so how did you move back to Pensacola? So most of your life, would you say you stayed in California, or would you travel back to Pensacola?
I would always come back every year because my parents were alive, and so I would always come back at least once a year, typically during the Christmas holidays, to see them. And then my mother passed in 2002, and so I kept the house, and then so I just moved back. Since the house was still here, I moved back into the house, family home.
And that was recently or a while ago?
2010, 2011, something like that.
And before that, you were in South California?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So in California during that time frame, I mean, you had a nice gap of just working there. Did you do anything throughout those years, join organizations or anything like that, or you were just doing your thing in Southern California?
Did I do?
Did you join organizations? You were right here.
I joined. I took up sports. Okay. I got involved in sports, and I got involved in jogging.
Okay.
And so once I started jogging, there was a park relatively close to my house, and so I met a group of folks, and they were a member of a running club called the Renaissance Runners. And so it was a loosely knit group of people, probably, I'm trying to think how many, maybe 50 people, 40 to 50 people, I guess. And so one of the things that we got involved with later is we started supporting the American Cancer Society. We developed a run, a 5K and a 10K and a walk. And so we did that for 20 years. We would go just through the heart of the city. It was called the Minnie Riperton Run, named after the singer who died from breast cancer.
Wow.
And so we supported them. And then one year they came to us and they said we were going to go on, even though we were making good sums of money for them. I think the last effort we did was we gave them a check for maybe, I don't know, $15,000, I'm thinking. But anyway, so they said, well, we're going to stop it because the American Cancer Society is going on a new pathway to raise money. And that's when they started the Relay for Life, I think. Okay. So basically, Relay for Life. Yeah. So they started doing that on a national scale in all of the cities. So that was the last time that we did that run for them.
Did you ever run on a marathon? Ever did a marathon run?
I did. I only finished one.
Yeah.
But I probably tried 3 or 4 times, and I finished one. And my training just wasn't, I think it was due to my training.
Okay.
I didn't, some people can train for marathons and train running 20 miles, which is what I did. I said, well, I can tough it out the last 6 miles, but I found that I couldn't do that. It was the wrong, I should have. So cramps just kind of the cramps.
Been there. I did one
done it
only,
too?
the one, but that's about it. I
Yeah.
tried, but after the 28, you start feeling it around 17, 18 miles. You're like, okay,
yeah,
I'm
right,
like,
right,
how am I going to go through the last six,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
6,
yeah.
7.
So the only one that I did really, I ended up walking and jogging it. So,
Okay.
but yeah, you have to put in the mileage. I mean, some people's bodies, or some people can do it better than others. But how did you train for yours? Did you exceed 20 miles in your training, 26 miles in your training, or did you?
No, I try to stick in 26, 27, no more than that. I did not push myself further than that. I mean, I was barely able to even do 26, you know, at that point. Even in my training, I think the most I went, it was like 23, 24. I didn't even finish doing 26 until the day off.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I think to the point that I led, it took me like at least 3 to 4 weeks before the main run. That's when I ran like, you know, the 23 miles, because I'm like, okay, do I have it in me? Barely. Like I was like walking on the floor at that point. You know, it was rough. It takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, so they had a lot of training programs in Southern California for people who wanted to do the marathon training. So so it was, which is good, you know, because it's you have to train, you know, progressive steps and doing that. So.
Takes a year. If you really do it properly, it's like a year, at least 6, 7 months. You have to definitely be on, schedule, tight schedule.
Right.
Little by little, build those. But you know, then later on down the road, you realize running is not as great. You know, you start having leg issues. I don't know if you noticed, but
Then so after jogging, then I started race walking. I converted to that.
Okay.
So I did that for a number of years, and I enjoyed that. Yeah, so met a lot of good folks who race walk. So
in California, I think that's the perfect weather, perfect place to do it. If you're going to do it, that's the place to do it at.
Yeah, Southern California, the weather's almost perfect because, you know, I could get up. It doesn't get that hot until maybe the month of maybe our hot months were maybe September, beginning of October. But other than that, it stays so mild during the day. Unlike here, I mean, I see people jogging during noon. I said, no way could I do that, you know, when temperatures hovering around 95 degrees. I see people jogging. I said, I just couldn't do it. Yeah,
that definitely does take a toll eventually. So then, do you still run over here in Pensacola or walk?
No, because sciatica now. Yeah, I had both hips replaced years ago, and then my sciatica started bothering me. So I just bike nowadays. You know, I ride my bike and trying to walk again, but it seems like, you know, I walk 10 minutes and this random sciatica, my left leg goes numb. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of therapy.
Right.
Yeah, trying a little of everything to see what can resolve it.
Do you think it was all due to the running earlier on, or just from other issues?
All the doctors can tell me, the MRIs can tell, X-rays, that something's pushing against the nerve, but what is caused it? I mean, it could very well be, but
right.
I don't know, because I know people who've never exercised before and they still have sciatica issues. So I don't know if you can ever find the cause. So I just try to take it a day at a time, and like I said, get some exercise in, stretching, and riding my bike.
Okay, so moving on, how did you become a member over here where we're at currently at the Chappie Museum? Like, what made you come in here, and how did you find out about it?
Well, what happened is there was a building behind us, on the corner behind us. You see the white building, and it's a nonprofit, and it's called Movement for Change. It's a social justice oriented kind of nonprofit. And so I was a member of that when I returned here from Los Angeles. I was a member of that organization because a buddy of mine founded it. And so while trying to find some work to do, I ran across these papers related to the fact that they had the drawings, they had the architectural drawing. I think they were the first institution that actually hired an architect to do some rough drawings of converting this building into a museum.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved. And so we tried to pursue that effort, went to the city And because what happened, and all of this really, this whole idea, concept, we have to be thankful for the efforts of the sister of General James, whose name was Lily Jane Frazier. For some reason, she had the insight to donate this property to the city.
Okay.
So I never met her, but she must have obviously had the insight that, hey, something can become great of this property. So she donated the house and the property to the city of Pensacola. And so what happened, the city of Pensacola maintained it, and they decided to make it into a small, I call it, I use the word mini park, where they had some fountains, they put some benches out and a sidewalk, and they put a roof on and new windows. But the building was never developed inside. So when we came along with the idea, we presented it to the city, hey, let's make something out of this project, let's make it into a museum. They gladly accepted the idea. And the idea was really an effort to find some funding for the project. And it said, go ahead. And I remember the mayor, we found a grant, and I remember the mayor writing a letter to the granting authority, say, yeah, we're going to give these folks a chance to apply for the grant, and they have our full approval. And little did I know, when I looked at the requirements for a grant, I never knew anything about a grant, right? Oh, yeah. The grant says, you have to be a 501c3, you have to have a proposal. I said, what? What's a 501c3? Mm-hmm. So we had to figure out what's a 501c3. We had to go through the government process of developing the application for a 501c3. That happened after we were luckily approved in our first effort, and I think that happened in 2015. Okay. And so then there was a series of events that kind of shows you how things work once the idea is there sometimes. So we, the city of Pensacola worked with us. We found that, and Carlton Charles, who's here, you'll interview him, he's part of the Eastside Neighborhood Association, which is an association that has boundaries, and this building is within the boundaries of the Eastside Neighborhood Association. Okay. So they knew about an Eastside Neighborhood Development Plan, and within that plan, one of the city council persons had developed a special tax base for the residents. And so this is a small tax base, it's called taxable increment funding, TIF. Mm-hmm. Many cities have it. But anyway, this particular funding had amounted to almost $500,000. Wow. So that was a special account in the city's bank, I'm using the word bank account, that had about $500,000 in it. So we went to the city along with the Eastside Neighborhood Development Association, Eastside Neighborhood Association, and then we started the negotiations, the preparation, the ideas for turning this, the initial funding for turning this into a grant. So, initially we had no clue as to where the monies would come from. Monies appeared magically. I won't say magically, the monies appeared, and the rest is history. So here we are today.
Did you feel the city made it difficult for you to go through the process, or were there a lot of loops around that you had to go around?
Well, I'm grateful. I mean, it wasn't easy because it was just part of the learning process.
It's a learning process.
So, right. As they say, it's a journey, it's not the destination. So I feel grateful that I had a chance to go through it and learn what it takes to develop a grant, to write a proposal to the IRS for the application for the 501c3 and all the other hurdles that we've had some minor hurdles, but it's okay.
It's been all right. You're surviving.
I look favorably on it, on the process. It's been a learning experience.
How has it been during the pandemic? Have you guys?
Well, it helped. Well, it obviously affected the visitors. Yeah. It affected the visitor base. Yeah. So. Like every business.
Right. Did you guys have to close down for a while?
Yes, we did.
You did. So that took probably took a hit on that end too.
Right. So it did. Yeah, we had a pretty big decrease in our number of visitors. But again, you know, I guess when those things happen, you start thinking about other options as far as writing a plan. What do you do, and if that happens again? You know, how do you keep your visitor base going? So one of the things that came out of that is that I think I mentioned that we have now a sort of a it's like association or partnership with the University of West Florida's communication department.
Okay.
So we've aligned ourselves with two of the instructors in that department, and what they do, they teach a basic communications class, and it's a semester-long class, and what it allows it's a win-win situation both for the university and for us, because the students write proposals in this particular class, sort of a marketing proposal, and they use our museum as an example. So far we've got like 6 or 7 proposals from the students saying, you know, these are some ideas that we have on how you can increase the visitor base. This is what you can do to market. And you know, they had a survey, they developed surveys, what we use to tally or get information from the citizenry about what it would take for them to come to the museum. So it's been a win-win situation for us.
Yeah, I just heard right now, I think a couple minutes ago, that you guys received a grant. Do you know which grant was that on, or what is it regarding?
So we are partnered with the General Daniel Chappie James Flight Academy. Did you go into that other part of the building? So they started their program long before we started ours. They were a group of black pilots who met each other during their flight training at the Naval Air Station.
Okay.
And so they've been doing their efforts, and their efforts are oriented towards motivating students to think about going to college, to studying technical, mathematical, scientific kinds of environment, maybe to go to further their education. So they use General James as a role model, and they use their flight experiences as pilots to say to kids, hey, I've done it, I've had challenges, you're always going to have challenges in your life, you can do it too. So they just had a summer camp, they had a week-long camp that just ended last week, and they had, I'm not sure how many students, because of the pandemic, the number of students has been decreased, but before the pandemic, they had probably 30 or 40 kids in the camp. And if you see did you see the murals on the wall? Mm-hmm. So what they did, and the exciting part is on the last day of the camp, they take the kids out to a local airfield, Ferguson Airfield, which is probably about 15 miles west of the city, and they get up into these two-seater airplanes. The kids in one front seat, the pilots in the rear seat, and they go up in the air.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible.
And while up in the air, the pilot would say, "Okay, kid, you got it. You got the controls." So can you imagine what that does to a kid's confidence when they come home and they say, "Man, I flew an airplane for 15 minutes." Because I heard one of the parents say, you know, it made a difference in night and day with that kid's confidence when he returned back home.
Wow.
So
that is incredible.
Yeah.
I wish we were all saying, man, we wish we had this type of programs as kids,
Right.
Wow, yeah, that is, and that's what we're trying to work on. Like, how can we get, like, you know, the next generation, propel them to think about, like, you know, gain confidence. Honestly, I think that's a big factor, you know, because a lot of times, you know, like you went through a lot too, you know, as a kid, you know, we're talking here desegregation and all this. So building that confidence, self-esteem, you can do it attitude, you know. You only see like this on this end, like the white figures having everything around on that end. But what about the others? You know, what about us? You know, so I think by the community going back and doing programs such as this, building on that confidence, fortitude, self-esteem, I think the child gets that acknowledgement that they can do it too.
Correct.
They don't feel like the other, or they're like different than anyone. It's like, no, I could do it. I've done it. Have you driven airplane?
So one of our big efforts at the museum is to use General James and the Tuskegee Airmen as heroes. You know, they are our heroes. You know, they did fantastic things. They had these great challenges, but they overcame them. So, you know, we want to, you know, instill in the public and the kids and the parents too that, yeah, we have some heroes that we need to admonish. So I'm not sure if you are aware of the fact that there's a big monument that's being scheduled for General James. Probably it'll come to fruition in maybe the spring of next year. So there's a group of Marines. So, well, one of the things that already happened is that the new bridge. Are you familiar with the new bridge?
Mm-hmm.
Did you drive across the? Did you drive up?
No, I don't think we did.
Okay, so there's a 3-mile bridge that separates Pensacola from Pensacola Beach.
Okay.
And so the old bridge had reached its useful life. And so the state said, okay, we got to tear the old bridge down and we got to put up a new bridge. And so there was a local group of Marines and military people that said, hey, we want to name the new bridge in the honor of General Chappie James. So there was a big debate somewhat, because oftentimes when politicians get a chance to do something like that first, they'll name it after their buddies, or you know how politics go. And so the community said, no, we want to name it after General James. So that was a big debate where when I say we, the group of us, along with the Marines, we had to convince the two entities on this side of the bridge, both the city and the county, to agree. And then we had to address the entities on the other side of the bridge, which is the city and the county of Gulf Breeze and Santa Rosa County. So, because that was a big, who should the bridge be named after? So finally, and then someone said, okay, so finally we got the approval, and then someone on the county commission said, okay, let's let the community vote by email who the bridge should be named after. And overwhelmingly, people said we should be named after General James. So that kind of finalized everything. We took that recommendation to the state legislature. So there wasn't much they could do. They had to succumb to the votes of the people. So the new bridge will be named the General Daniel Chappie James Memorial Bridge. So at the foot of the bridge, and this is the part that's being planned right now, at our visitor center, there will be an 8-foot-high statue of General James mounted on a 6-foot pedestal. And in the back of it will be an F-4 airplane, which is what he flew. So they got the airplane already, which is a humongous task. And so that's scheduled to be done after the bridge. The bridge is still being worked on. Hopefully it'll be completed by the end of the year. And then hopefully in the spring of next year, we'll have a dedication ceremony for that. It'll be called the General James Memorial Plaza. So it'll be a testimonial to General James and his accomplishments. It'll be something that every visitor to this area will be able to see, and it will be great.
That is incredible. And then with the museum on hand right here, it's let's learn more. Why is the name like that? And you guys have a central location for that.
And so look, getting back to the grant, I'm sorry. So getting back to the grant, so the Flight Academy has a tremendous need. They've got probably maybe 8 or 10 simulators in that room. I can't remember how many, maybe more than that. But there's so the monies will be used to fund primarily an additional building over the stormwater pond in the back. And that'll be dedicated to the Flight Academy, and this part will be dedicated to the museum. And then we'll probably have a joint usage of the building where we'll have presentations indoor. We'll have room for indoor presentations, speakers, classes possibly. So it'll be an expansion of our efforts to have visitors and to educate the public.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations on all the hard work that you guys have been putting together. I think you guys are doing it the right way, meaning you're working with universities on top of that, to understand the business perspective, how to go about it, bring more people, applying for grants, getting monuments out there, getting the bridge, getting representation for the community. Would you say, I guess in the new bridge that is connected from one end to the other, are the community primarily Black, or what would you say, from both ends, from this county to the next, or wherever the bridge is expanding to? Or
probably Pensacola has, I'm thinking maybe a 20%, 25% Black African American population. Wow. The location on the other side of the bridge probably has maybe at best maybe 5%, maybe. I'm guessing. I don't know. I haven't seen any data, but yeah.
But that shows you the power of how things are changing.
Right, right. And General James was such a popular military hero to a lot of the people. I'm amazed at how many people came up and talked about how much they admired him. So, because we do have a lot of military retirees in the area. So,
what stands out for you from Chappie James? What is something that stands out for you as a person, or as an individual that we now know today?
I think his character and his ability to, we always talk about his mother, we didn't talk much about his mother. So his mother, this was the family home. And have you heard about his mother?
No,
okay,
please do tell us.
Okay, so this was the family home. And in this family home, there were 17 kids, 17 or 13 kids, depending on who you read. 17 kids were raised. And because of the time frame of health, only 10 of the 17 survived into adulthood. But anyway, she decided, and she saw the need for tutoring the neighborhood kids. Because, education, we're talking about the turn of the century, 1890s, 1900. Which slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation had just been,
right.
20, 30 years from then. So she saw the need for improved education. So although she had a high school education, no college degree or anything, she decided that she would start helping tutor the kids in the neighborhood, which she did in her house. And so when word got around, the kids kind of overwhelmed the size of the house. They built a little house in the back. They overwhelmed that, so they bought the house next door. So if you go outside, you'll see something that says Chappie's First Steps. Well, that was the school. That became the school. That house next door, which has since been torn down. So she had a great bit of success, a lot of success with that school. So what was I getting to? So the historic places designation, the registration was devoted really to her success and to General James's success. How did I start on this now? I can't remember, but
character.
Oh yeah, character. Yeah. So she had this 11th commandment. Chappie, when he spoke, he was a great speaker. He was much in demand by both military, political, civic causes, and he would always talk about the things that he learned from his parents. And he said, one of the things he always said, my mother taught me the 11th commandment, which is, thou shalt not quit. So that was always his climax to his speeches, his high point. And so I have to say that imbued his personality, the fact that, he had to always keep trying, keep going as far as he could, as fast as he could. Being fast sometimes meant he got in danger. He had some dangerous situations in his pilot career, but he tried. He made an effort. Okay. And he was a big example to both military personnel and to civilians.
Wow, incredible story. Hopefully we have some time to go through the museum and check out a little bit more on the history side of that. But I guess before we conclude, there's a couple of questions I would like to ask. Can you tell me a little bit about the camp? And you mentioned there's a camp that you guys do over here for the kids. How long does that last?
So I'm not really involved. That's really with the Flight Academy, but it typically lasts a week. Okay. 6 days. And they had one in this past, like I said, it just ended. And they'll have another one in July. And the bad thing about it is that some of their staff are still, like Cliff, the president, is still flying. He flies for Delta. Okay. So, and then the others are not natives. They don't live in the city. So there's that effort for them to develop some time to come into the cities. I know they have another camp that's scheduled for July.
It's once a year? Or
so right now it's twice a year, two times during the summer. And then I know they've had other classes during the fall, maybe a weekend class also. Okay. They have those occasionally also. I think they had one on wind tunnels. I don't know. I'm not really part of the organization, so I better not venture as to the detail of the class. But okay. So they do the best they can, considering that they are not actually physically here for the majority of the time.
All right. And where do you see now yourself next? What are the next moves for you, sir?
Well, I'm no longer part. So I'm no longer part of the board.
Okay.
So I was the president up until January of this year. So I resigned from the board. The new president, I'm not sure if he's going to be here or not.
Okay.
He's Dr. Marion Williams. You may get a chance to meet him.
Okay.
So, but since I guess Diane invited me, since I was part of the original crew that started the museum and kept it going.
Were you president during that time when you started?
Mm-hmm.
How were, I mean, I guess you did spoke a little bit on the challenges. Okay.
I started as the interim president. I kind of thought it would be real easy to find someone else to take over, but I found that oftentimes people are not really as eager to volunteer as you think. So anyway, so.
How long were you interim president or just president?
So probably as interim and then president, so probably I would say maybe 6 years, 7 years. I think we got our articles of incorporation from the IRS, I think in 2015. So I guess about since that time. So 2015 to 2022, so 2021, so 6 years, I guess.
Okay. Did you ever felt like, man, I want to quit this, or like, you know, it was just too much work, or what was your impressions on doing the work that you were doing?
Well, I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed it, you know, because I did not have any previous board experience, and you know, there's always those challenges of when you have various people with various ideas, there's that challenge. But I enjoyed it, getting people to accept other ideas, to conserve your thought, to think about how do you get what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's a good idea, what's not a bad. Because we were treading in, for myself, new waters, had not been involved with a museum before. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't take it for anything. I mean, it was a great challenge, great effort, good experience.
What was one of your favorite experiences while being president here? Like favorite memory or something memorable?
Well, I guess the opening day ceremony probably was.
The ceremony?
Yeah, the opening day ceremony. We opened in June of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people showed up, I'm assuming, here?
Right,
like
right. So it was an outdoor ceremony, the mayor and the city councilman and the county commissioners were here. So it was great. It was a great experience, great feeling.
Okay, and so now what is the plan for you? Now you're retired, you said, pretty much you're out of the board for now, but you still remain like a volunteer? Or
well, I got a lot of personal ideas I'm working with now. So
perfect.
I got some business ideas I'm working on, volunteer ideas. So
okay,
my goal is to stay busy.
Stay busy, that's the key.
Yeah,
that's the key to it. Yeah, once you slow down, everything just goes down.
I agree.
Okay, well, with that, is there any last message maybe you would like to leave to the community, whoever's listening to this interview? Any last words?
Well, you know, when I go back to anything, I always go back to Miss Lily James's 11th commandment, thou shalt not quit. Keep pushing forward. All
right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being here with you, and thank you for making time for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing all these details. There's a lot of information to grab from what we just recorded, and yeah, it's been a pleasure knowing you, sir, and all the work that you've done for this organization. You know, I know it's not easy even starting a 501c3, you know, a lot of paperwork, and you're not sure where it's heading to, or correct, you know, the vision, correct. But you believed in the vision, you saw it through, and you know, that's something that is going to be passed down to the next generations, all the hard work that you guys put together. So we thank you for that. Thank you. It's been a great experience in telling our story, so thank you for coming up and interviewing us. I appreciate your efforts. Absolutely. Well, that will conclude. All right.